I saw my friend dead on the side of the road. I saw his body. I saw he was like you hit a dog in a road, you just leave it and nobody gives a shit. Like this human being who did so much, this amazing human being who beat the odds, who did everything that people say is impossible. Special forces, Green Beret at 4'9". How do we just forget his story and let it die on the side of the road? If nobody's going to tell it, nobody, then I got to do it.
Battle Line podcast. Yeah, and I should mention the video, if you're watching on YouTube, might look slightly different. And to get into the technical aspect, I usually record to the computer the way it looks now. I record to the cloud because there's a crazy thunderstorm going
Yeah.
on outside. It's actually died down a little bit, but I didn't want to lose anything because we have an amazing interview with David Yuzuk. But that is why it might look a little different. And David Yuzuk is a former police officer in the Miami area and also documentary filmmaker. If you've seen The Giant Killer, you've seen Chris in it, and we cover it all with him, man. He leaves no stone unturned.
He's straight up Brooklyn, guys. Don't let the very first of the big man. He still may be in Miami, but that dude's a New Yorker through and through. And I love talking to David. He's just a nice guy, and he's very talented filmmaker for somebody that was his first try doing it. So we'll get into that with him, and yeah, he's just an amazing individual and the nicest guy in the world that cusses more than me, and that's hard to do. But he
Very
does.
true. Very true. If we're not monetized on YouTube, I am going to blame him if for this
It's
episode. There's a
I
lot of
don't get blamed.
F-bombs.
I don't get blamed this time. He gets the blame. I get blamed on the
No.
other ones, but he gets the blame on this one.
Yeah, it is what it is, man. But with that, before we get into this with David Yuzuk, I have to tell you the best supplement company out there for relief, for pain relief. Love their relief balm. Their daily blend actually balm, which is great for to use basically in place of a daily moisturizer because it's got that CBD in there. But CBD just in general is amazing for getting a great night's sleep. I love the brain blend because it's a mix between really two supplements. You have a supplement for your mental health, for your brain health, your brain function, with the lion's mane in there, the ginseng, the ginkgo biloba leaf, all of that, along with the CBD, which gets you a great night's sleep. I actually just took that last night. Put the drop under my tongue, and your tongue kind of gets a little numb. You start to feel good, and you don't get high or anything, which I always should stress there. But you just feel good, and then you get a great night's sleep. Best brand out there. Everything is made in Colorado, so you're getting a great product out there. Also check out their Mellow Magnesium. Go to helloned.com/battleline or add the code battleline at checkout. As a first-time customer, you'll get a great deal through us when you go to helloned.com/battleline. With that, let's get over to David Yuzuk.
From Kansas City to New York City, from planet Earth to extraterrestrial life in space, a podcast with no equal, engaged in unconventional warfare through your speakers and headphones. This is a show about embracing the suck, conquering your demons, and finding God in the face of adversity. Chris Tonto Peranto.
Switch is on. Motherfucker, I'm gonna shoot you in the face.
Ian Scotto.
Ian and I have been dating for a long time.
You are now tuned into the Battle Line Podcast.
The Switch is on, Battle Line podcast, and this is a guy we've been meaning to have on actually for a really long time now, and I'm glad we're finally doing it. David Yuzuk, Aventura Police Department veteran, detective, undercover officer, and for those who don't know, that's right outside of the Miami area. But many of you know him as a author, filmmaker of The Giant Killer, which I had been meaning to see for a very long time. And in preparation for this interview, I finally watched. And man, I have to say, not only what a great job you did and Chris
Yeah.
appearing in the film, but I mean, you really did a great service to, and I'm making sure I have the name right here. Yeah, a great service to Richard Flaherty, in that this is a guy who probably would have been truthfully forgotten about, even his service as a veteran. And we'll get into the film itself, but I just wanted to say, in reaction to someone who just saw it, man, I really was blown away by what you did.
Really appreciate it, and I really appreciate you guys having me on.
Oh yeah, no, dude,
Absolutely.
it's awesome, and people realize it's been out for. I mean, when did we record that? 2016. It was a
Yeah,
long time ago,
that's
man.
9 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and now it's on two. I watch Tubi more than we don't get the cable out here in the sticks where I'm at, so we get internet TV, but Tubi runs it continually, man, and that's honestly for me that's my favorite go-to TV internet streaming service, and lack commercials. You don't get a lot of the wokeness on there, but it's on there quite often, man, and that was the first big one
I
I
watched it
saw.
on Amazon Prime.
And Amazon Prime has it now too. I mean, so I guess my question is when we did it, I didn't know if it was going to go, and now it's starting to me, it's starting to pick up steam. But again, it's yours, David. I'm sure you monitor it. Do you see it more now as picking up more now than it did when we first did it? Because I see it more now than I did when we first did it or when you first released it. But maybe that's just because I watch a little bit more TV. I'm home more now. I don't know, man. What do you think, bro?
I think you're 100% right. I mean, I kind of did a lot of this project on my own. There was no PR
Yeah.
team, there's anything. So I started doing social media and just trying to get the word out, and it's just basically snowballed. But before we jump into conspiracies and Green Berets and espionage and all this stuff, and I promise for your audience that's wondering, like, why does he have a bloated Steven Seagal looking guy on? We want to hear Chris talk. The guy looks like Bull from Night Court. Before we get into that, let me tell your
You
audience who I
do
am.
shit. You do, dude. You do. I'm like you look exactly like Bull from Micro
Yeah,
with a
boy.
beard. I forget.
No, what
Oh,
happened is you haven't seen me, Chris. I had to shave my head, man. It
yeah.
was going too thin. I had dandelion head, so I had no choice. I had to shave it. But so I promise you guys, if you hang in after I want to tell a Chris Peranto story first. But if you
Oh
guys
shit. What
hang
did I
in,
do?
you'll
Come
see how I
on,
met you.
man.
But before, I just want to promise you guys, I'm going to tell you a story about a tiny homeless man that, even as a police officer, shocked my world. Somebody I was friends with for 15
Yeah.
years who kind of gave me his life story, and truth is definitely stranger than fiction. And I promise, guys, we're going to go down that rabbit hole. But first, a Chris Peranto story. How did I meet Chris? So they were having the red carpet of 13 hours
That's nice. Yeah.
in my city, Aventura, and I was a veteran police officer at the time at the movie theater. So I was kind of assigned to the director, Michael Bay, and just assigned to just kind of make sure things went smooth and everything, and just kind of shadow him around. Some reason we were caught in a hallway right before the movie started. I'm caught in a hallway with a whole bunch of actors, and nothing against actors. And there's this pretty tall actor standing next to me, and then there's this ripped up little special forces looking actor, and I'm like, why does Hollywood always get these guys, a square jaw, black hair, kind of Rambo ripped up? Why don't they get like real, like bloated guys like me to be special forces? So I'm standing next to these two guys, and the lights are kind of out, and I'm monitoring my police radio, and I'm kind of watching. I'm trying to do my job, and you never know, there could be a crazy person. So there's also a lot of background noise, but I hear, hey, I think we could take him. I'm like, what the fuck? And the little guy next to me. So then he goes to his buddy. He goes, hey, I'm going to double leg him, get him down to the ground to take his gun. You jump on him. And if you think saying that to a cop is possibly disrespect, it's not. That is, if you speak from the world we come from, that is the ultimate respect. The guy saying, hey, you know what? I think I could kick your ass and take your gun. So I turned to the guy who I thought was like a pretty boy little actor, and it's Chris Peranto, and I shook his hand. And I believe the other dude you wanted to jump, it was that Pablo dude.
It was Pablo. No, it was Pablo. I remember because it was a soft opening. It was in Miami. It was Michael Bay's hometown.
Yeah,
because we had to do a soft, like a pre-opening, because he wanted the at his home theater. I remember and there's pictures. We me and him are in the line, and he is huge. And when I said it, I knew you could. I mean, I was hoping you'd hear about it. I was like, dude, we can get this guy. Man. And I was
Yeah.
trying to see what Pablo would do because Pablo was still being kind of he's trying to maintain his actor composure.
Yeah.
And I was trying to get him to lighten up, man. Come on, man, laugh. This is fucking fun. And
Yeah,
so
man.
you were cool about it because I could.
Well, that's how I
got a
knew.
shit-
I knew this isn't a fucking actor. This is a real guy standing next because he's joking around the way we joke around, and like in the police world. I'm not. Listen, guys, I was never in the military, and I was never, and I have the utmost respect for anyone who served in the military, especially Chris doing the Army Rangers and how difficult. But he was speaking my language. You know, if a dude's like, "Hey, I didn't take this motherfucker," I'm like, "All right, let me stick my hand
And I
out."
also feel like that's probably double as being a New Yorker, right? Because I feel like New
Yeah.
Yorkers, we just bust balls like no one else.
Yeah, it's a way for men and men talk to say hello. You know, hey, I think I can kick your fucking ass. That's a man way to say hello. So I introduced myself, and then lo and behold, he was the perfect guy at that time in my life for me to speak to, because I just started working on this project about this homeless guy that I was friends with. And however you guys want to steer me into the story, I'll go into the story. But I got really lucky meeting Chris at that time, because Chris opened up the whole world of private military, because I didn't have any military background or understanding, and Chris really opened up a lot of that world. And then I had access to him for the documentary, so you couldn't ask for a more perfect, better dude, and he probably could have kicked my ass.
No, dude, you're cute. You're like
No.
Pablo. Dude. The reason
No.
I said it is because have you seen the size of Pablo?
Yeah, it's a big boy.
6'4", 230-pound muscular. It's like that. So I'm being a smart ass. I got a big dude right here. And I can run. So if you started winning, I just take off and leave him, man. But
I watched the interview with you and Pablo, and I didn't know anything about him. What a regular, cool fucking dude. He comes across. For those who haven't watched Pablo on Battle Line podcast, guys, check it out, because he's so smooth. He's such a regular dude.
And that was the thing is with him is, and his mother, she's the nicest person in the world. Such a sweetheart. I've never met his half brother, Leave. I don't know how they're late. I never really got into it, but he is, and that's the sad thing is when you get comments, oh, he's this left wing Hollywood. No, he's not. He just does his thing. If he agrees with you, he agrees. If he doesn't, he doesn't. Does it mean he's left wing? Does it mean he just Pablo. And that's why I'm glad, most people will pick up on that if they can get past their politics. They'll just find that. And with me, him and I are still friends, obviously, to this day. I can talk to him just like I can talk to you. It's like, hey, motherfucker. What's going on? Hey,
no, he was very, I was pretty shocked. Like, he was such a regular street guy. He came off such a gentleman. And I was like, man, I guess they did pick the right guy to play Chris. So great job.
That was my first time meeting him too. And I was in the studio, so it was cool getting to meet him in person. I definitely obviously want to get into the documentary. I'm sure some people have seen it. Some people here are going to end up checking it out after this interview. But actually, I think first it would just be cool to get into, how did you get into police work? Your story of moving from New York to the Miami area. I'd love to just get that backstory.
So I was thinking about doing this podcast, and this is a special podcast for me because of Chris. And, I look up to him and I appreciate everything he's done for me at this point. So I wanted to do two things. I wanted to give a little, I've done a whole bunch of podcasts. I wanted to make sure on this show I gave something that people have never heard before, or bring something new to the table that, when I do have a little social media follow and say, hey guys, make sure you check out this podcast, because you're going to hear some shit I never mentioned before. So I never really talk about, especially on social media, I don't really talk about my background, but I'm going to spill it all out for you guys. But I think it's a good lesson, especially special forces guys, military guys. I think we all kind of came from hard backgrounds and a little bit of difficult and some adversarial stuff as kids. So I grew up in Brooklyn. I came from basically a one-parent household. My mom was working all the time. Nobody was watching me and my brother. Thank God I didn't find, my brother forced me to play football. I ended up playing high school and college ball, because otherwise I would have lost my mind. But when I was playing high school and college ball, I was playing college ball in Stony Brook in Long Island. I was working as a bouncer in all the nightclubs, and I kind of started picking up some bad habits, and I started, these were really rough places, and it was pretty violent, and I was starting to fall into a bad element, and some of the guys that I was working with were a bad, and I had the self-awareness even at 21 years old to know you better change your friends, and you better change your environment, and you better, because it's coming too easy for you. I don't know why at 21 I had that self-awareness that I kind of knew this was going in the wrong direction and I was getting into trouble. So I made the idea just to change everything, and went down to Miami. It was actually after my first shoulder operation. I'm up to number 10 on shoulder operation. So it was there. I was going down to Miami to do a little physical rehab, but I also, in the back of my mind, was saying, man, I better do some changing in my life. So I went down there and I just never went back. I had a really bad experience in Miami with a police officer. I was behind a DUI. The guy was all over the road. I saw a cop on the side of the road eating a sandwich, and I pulled up next to him. I was like, bro, there's a DUI, and look, he's almost hitting these people and everything. And the guy basically just rolled up his window and told me to go fuck myself. So I just kind of thought in my mind, maybe I could do a better job. It's not something I ever thought about, being a cop, but I just kind of thought maybe I could do a better job. And then I kind of thought that, I kind of had a rough upbringing. I kind of, understand people a little bit better. And I think as a police officer, you got to give people sometimes some breaks as opposed to always being by the book, because once, especially for a young man, once you arrest that young man for whatever it is, and hopefully it's, you're encountering nothing too serious, you're putting that mark on them for the rest of their life, where they have to explain why do they have this arrest on there. And especially a lot of these guys who want to go into the military, things like that. So I kind of felt like that would make me a better police officer, that my background, that I made a shitload of mistakes, and I'm just trying to do a better job than some of the guys that I saw. So that's how I got into law enforcement. And I was a little bit of a troublemaker kid growing up.
That's how I think. And when I was going through my FBI stuff, when I was thinking about joining the HRT team, and I remember I told him that. I was like, hey, I think the best officers are the ones that have screwed up, that actually have been in trouble. Because I admitted to selling drugs in college during my polygraph, and I didn't have a problem. I hadn't done it in a while. I'd been working for the CIA, but I was, you know what? And they got, of course, they're like, well, you admitted to it. I'm like, well, yeah, I did it. Well, Polly, I'm not going to lie to you. We can't have you, so we're going to rescind. But it was like, wow, man, I think the best officers are the ones that actually have got in trouble, because they know, first of all, they know what to look for, because they were heathens themselves. They were heathens themselves growing up. But also, you're right. There are times where common sense, man. Do I need to give this kid a break, or do we need to slime him because he's just a shithead, and you can't do that if you just by reading by the book. And I think that's where we have our problems with some of the law enforcement, especially in the feds. It's by the book. It's like, no, it's not by the book. You have to have some sort of intelligence and some common sense, street smarts is what we used to call it. I know you call it that.
Yeah.
Street smarts to deal with the issues. So no, it doesn't shock me at all that you went that route. I'm just glad you did, because you could have went the total other route too. And that cop said, fuck off. You could have said, no, well, screw this. I'm going to screw every cop. And I'm not going to do anything law enforcement tells me, but you went the other route.
Which is what we're seeing. And I don't even want to go down this thing, but this is what we're seeing in today's society, is a society of fucking whining crybabies. Guys, if you want to change the world, you have to go out and change it. Don't expect someone else to do it. If you're upset about law enforcement, upset about politicians, go do something. Don't sit on your fucking computer and talk shit. Go out in the world and help. Sometimes people think you got to hit a home run. You got to do something gigantic. No, starts out small. Just do small little acts. Just start walking in the right direction of doing something, regardless of whatever your thing is. But don't sit there and be a victim. I can't do this, and it's stacked against me. And fuck that, man.
Exactly, man. Victims.
It's funny too, because I know I've said this on the show, like being the civilian of the group, but I especially noticed this when I started working prior to this at SOPREP, and we would do these meetups like at SHOT Show, and a lot of the fellow civilians I would meet, they would always say like, man, my biggest regret is that I didn't join the military. And they were like, oh, very like down on themselves about I can't make a difference now. And it's like, I don't care if you're 40, 50 or 60, there's always something you
Always
could do,
something.
whether it's in your community. Like we just had Terry Shepard on. He's no longer in the military, but he's rescuing these
Yeah.
old age dogs. Like he's making a positive impact. He's making a difference. And yeah, that's what it's all about.
Well, who's Dave? And we had him on the show. The gentleman that
Bobby
cleans
Myers.
Bobby Myers. What's he doing now to make it? And it does make a difference. He's out there cleaning tombs. He's cleaning headstones, man.
Yeah, and that's just something he does on his own. And he
I know,
really,
isn't it?
yeah, he picked
crazy.
that thing up on his own. There's another green. I don't know if you guys have had him on yet. Another Green Beret that I speak to, a gentleman named Ryan Hendrickson. Have you guys had? He wrote a book called Tip of the Spear. In
We
Afghanistan,
haven't had him on yet.
yeah, but in Afghanistan, great guy. Part of his leg was
Yeah.
blown off with an IED
Yeah.
in Afghanistan. He has some sort of prosthetic that helps him. What does the guy do? You think he comes back and he finishes tour in Afghanistan? He's in Ukraine, helping remove landmines from the field so little kids and farmers don't get blown up. Like there's so many heroes out there. This is a guy who's already sacrificed for his country, but he doesn't want to see that same thing happen to a small kid or something. So don't tell me, you can't change the world. Here's a guy who's already done his time. Here's a guy, he did his time. He served his country honorably. He could just go off and drink a beer at the mountain, and hang out by the river, but he's out there trying to do better in the world. So, I try to stay off social media because those, it really pisses me off when people just say they're victims and they can't do anything.
Well, you're in New
It's
York.
very,
You still got,
low-
that mentality, dude. You're going to
Yeah.
talk shit. If you start, somebody's going to push your button, dude. You're going to talk. So it's better to stay away from it. And
Yeah, you also
no,
realize, I think all social media, I realize it's like very low vibrational energy. I mean, I feel like the people I hang out with in my everyday life, like they're doing different things, whether it's my friends who work in finance or my friend, like I don't know, it's a lot more positive. And then you go on social
Yeah.
media and everything is complaining constantly. I'm not into that,
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know,
well,
listen, the world is changing, but whatever, man, we're going to do what we can.
it's all you can. Brother, going in the law enforcement, I guess I really never talked to you. I'd always wanted to know what made you move away from. I mean, we didn't really talk retirement. Maybe it was retirement. I never asked you, man. But
No,
why did you move away from it and start doing other things?
No, it wasn't my choice. Unfortunately, besides the 10 shoulder operations, my back got so bad. I had a thing in my back called spondylolisthesis, where it wasn't just a herniated disc. One of my actual bones was moving away from my spine, so they had to fuse me.
Ow.
So I was having a lot of trouble at work with the gun belt, and even when I was in the detective bureau. But I had my spine fused, and then after the fusion, I had a second back surgery. And after that second back surgery, nobody would sign off on me going back into police work. So my department did a great job. They let me work a desk for as long as possible. But at some point, you got to let a young guy come into the police department and take over my slot, and which is what I did. So they retired me on a disability pension, and it is what it is. I never complain about. I never say that it's something, I wouldn't do it the same way, whether it's the active lifestyle, the police work, all the injuries to me were worth it, because at the end, this body is going to be like a rent-a-car when I turn this thing in, and the big guy's going to look at me. What did you do? I did what you wanted me to use it. So I don't want to return it all new. So I'm going to return it all dinged up. And
you sound that's how we are. I'm saying, I didn't know if you knew, I got a new hip 3 weeks ago. I'm 53 years old. I got a whole freaking metal, but I don't regret anything. I don't regret it in the least. Like, man, it's like a badge of honor. It's like a thing. I'm like, man, I did my job right. I remember my sergeants would always say that. My platoon sergeant, if you do your job right, you're going to have new hips, you're going to have new shoulders, you're going to have new knees.
Right.
Then you've done your job right. So obviously I've done my job right. I was just wait. I wish I would have pushed it about 10 more years. So it's about 60. But yeah, man, I feel you. And just, you have that great outlook that I would expect a guy like you to have. We're like, hey, I'm hurt. So what? Don't bitch about it. That's
You have
a
beautiful meal, and my life's been a wild roller coaster. You got to pay the bill, so I'm paying the bill.
Yeah.
So, but I'm not going to complain about the meal. It was a great meal. I mean, I did everything I wanted to do. I had the wildest funnest times and growing up in New York and Brooklyn and nightclubs and football and police work and detective stuff. And then, you know, I got into this writing and film stuff. So I have had such a great and blessed ride. I have nothing to complain about. There's nothing that I don't know. I don't wake up any day and regret anything.
That's awesome.
That's
Well,
awesome here. Yeah,
so
it is.
with Green Beret Richard Flaherty, like I said, I just watched the documentary, and I'm sure some people, like I said, have seen it. Some people will watch it after this interview, as I said when I brought you on. But you know what I was wondering, you know, making a documentary, this was like the perfect subject to have. You met with him just a couple of days before he died to kind of discuss some things. The one question that actually wasn't answered in the documentary, and it may be a good place to start, because I was wondering, were you planning on doing a documentary on Richard
Yeah.
Flaherty like the 2 days before he died? Or were you just talking with him as a friend and then the idea came about?
No. So first, I'm going to bring everyone who doesn't know what we're talking about up to speed.
Sure.
So while I'm a cop
Good
in
job.
Aventura, Florida, I encounter a homeless guy early on in my career, right around the 1999 or something. I encounter a homeless man, tiny little dude on the street. I would see him in the movie theater, say hello, blah, blah, blah. As a cop, you go up, you say, you know, can I get you some help? You need a shelter, this. And he always clean. He was, you know, well fed. So you can't force somebody who doesn't want to be in a shelter. But we had kind of a friendship, an ongoing friendship for 15 years. And I knew there was something up with this tiny little guy because he knew so much about the world and geopolitics. And that's like something now I look back, I'm like, yeah, Green Beret. But he used to tell me, you know, hey, in 6 months, this country is going to invade this country. This is going to happen in the world. This economy is going to fall. And I'm like, how does this little dude know, this little homeless dude know all this? So in the summer of 2015, after 15 years of friendship, and me and him would go for coffee and lunch and sandwiches in a sandwich shop, he says, this was the end of April of 2015. He says, Dave, I got to tell you who I really am. And as a cop, you know, we're skeptical. We're like, holy shit, he's
Sure.
been my friend. He's going to say that he murdered somebody. What is he going to say? So he says the most outlandish, he says worse. He says the most outlandish thing I've ever heard. He said, I am the smallest man to ever serve in the military. And I'm going, bullshit. He said he was 4'9". At the end, they found out his actual height was 4'7", but there's no such thing as a 4'7" guy in the military. And then he went on to say that he was a private military contractor, went to Rhodesia. He told me about undercover operations with the ATF. And like I said, I was going to share something that I really never talk about. It's in the book, it's in my book, but I don't go into any detail. Is the recovery of a subatomic demolition munition, a SATM, that Richard was part of in this 1980 undercover operation with the ATF. There is no official paperwork anywhere you'll find of them recovering it, but the weapon was stolen. It was recovered by them in this operation. It was sent back to, I forgot, Richard told me there's a place in Germany. For those who don't know, the United States, and I'm not an expert at all about subatomic demolition munitions, they came up with a small 70, 80-pound nuclear device that was supposed to be carried in by some special forces teams. A lot of times the Green Berets, they were called green light teams, and they would carry it basically like a backpack. So I guess in the late 60s, there was about 300 of them, a lot of them staged in Europe, just in case we needed to plant it on somebody or blow somebody up. And one of them got stolen. So what I want to share I didn't tell, you know, I didn't say in the book and anything, is I did get recently warned off about talking about it anymore. And that's why you see I'm a line stepper like Chris, and I'm stepping right back on that fucking line. I'm not going to cross the fucking line, but I'm going to walk right up to it.
Yeah, go push him all the way.
I
Fuck
put,
them,
fuck
them
it, fuck
government
it.
sons
Yeah,
of bitches.
so I kind of got like a, hey, you know, look, we saw what you put in the book. What you put is pretty, you know, let's just leave it at that. If there's any more information like that, can you please contact this person, clear first before you start giving it out. So all I'm going to say is this about that. That's they also said this, so I'm going to step on that fucking line. Is Richard Flaherty told me that when they recovered this SATM, that it was an actual working nuclear device. And I kind of asked Richard, well, how much power would it had? And he said something like the Hoover Dam. It'd easily take out the Hoover Dam, or maybe 3 blocks in the New York City. You take out like 3 major blocks plus the nuclear fallout and radiation. And then, but he claimed that it was an actual live SATM. He didn't really talk to me about the money, about how much they paid for it on the black market, because that's where they got it. They found it on the black market. And, but the person who kind of warned me off said, hey, I just want you to know your information in the book was off. That was a training SATM that they recovered, which was great. I was like, all right, you're confirming to me that they did recover it. So they said, no, that was a train. It's an actual SATM, but there was a bunch of the parts that were missing and never could have been utilized. Obviously, the last thing we'd want is to get in any of our adversaries' hands, but that was 100% not a workable nuke. And I was okay, so that's not something I probably was supposed to talk about, whether it was live or not, but that's something.
That's crazy that people, a lot of people, this is the first time they've ever heard anything like that. That we even have things like that. Like, people, these basically man pads. They're basically man portable nuclear devices, and we're always worried about dirty bombs. But as the U.S., we've got these.
Listen, I don't want to give anybody fucking nightmares, but knowing there's 300 of these little nuclear devices that could accidentally get stolen because one of them, the rumor was that one that he helped recover was stolen from Vietnam, and I didn't push too deep because one of the really great information people really put his neck out to give me some information. So I'm responsible to him and not putting any people in trouble. The one thing that's kind of interesting that I want to get back to your question about making the documentary. And so after Richard gave me that incredible revelation, which I didn't believe at all, saying he's the smallest guy, he's a spy, he's James Bond.
Of course, who would? You're talking to a homeless guy. Why would
right?
You?
So
I did something like, yeah, whatever, dude. Sure,
yeah. So I ended up that night checking it on Google, and then lo and behold, all these old newspaper articles start popping up. Smallest man joins the military. Smallest man wants his Green Beret, and I'm like, holy fucking shit! This guy for 15 years, I could have gotten the mysteries of the world out of this man. And, but then I still, honestly, I didn't, how much of his story is actually true? How much does he blow and smoke? I understand the military stuff, the Green Beret stuff, and he earned the Silver Star, 2 Bronze Stars, and 2 Purple Hearts. Yeah. Now, he wasn't part of those MACV SOG guys that are coming out now, like the John Stryker Myers. He was with the 3rd Special Forces Group, which was stationed in Thailand. The first thing that threw me off was when I asked Richard, what did you guys do in Thailand? If the war's in Vietnam, what are you guys doing? Why would they put specialized? So he gave me this it was too well-rehearsed speech about training Thai Border Patrol, and we're just making an eye on the Border Patrol, and we're training them and this and that. Years later, when I interviewed the Green Beret captain who replaced him on his tour in Vietnam, he said the same exact thing in the same exact cadence. And then after it took me about 6 months of just questioning, they were doing some stuff similar to MACV SOG, but more in Burma and Malaysia, that they were going across the border, across the fence, the way those guys call it. So the MACV guys, SOG guys started coming out now. This group of guys were the 3rd Special Forces Group for the 46th Special Forces Company. And I assume some of their stories will eventually start coming out now that they were doing more than just training Thai police. But getting back to Richard, I'm talking a million miles an hour because I'm trying to get nice and deep and dirty for you guys.
Yeah, this is good shit, man.
Getting back to Richard. So I went back to him that week, and the whole point of him telling me this is people, why did he tell you at this point? Why did he wait 15 years? Blah, blah, blah. Because on the top of his head, you can see some of the video in my documentary and some of the video I post. On the top of his head, he had stage 4 cancer, and he was getting treated at the VA from the Agent Orange. So I think somewhere in his mind, he knew his time was kind of running out, and he wanted to get his story out to the world. But what was the original story? The thing he was kind of prepping me on, he's like, Dave, they didn't properly prepare us from combat life back into civilian life. And I kind of want you to get my story out there. So these guys coming back from, he's thinking Iraq, Afghanistan, don't go through the same things that I went through, and make me promise you get my story out. So I'm like,
and by the way, what do you think he even meant by getting your story out? Because at that time,
I think he wanted me to find it. No, I think he wanted me to try to talk to a reporter. He knows that I was a detective, and I had some news reporters. So I think it was more set up something with the news. Certainly, he wasn't looking at me, to write a book or do a movie. Nothing like that. I think it was just.
You don't think? I think where Ian's going, I'm kind of going that same route. You don't think he was, you being a detective, he's trying to give information to dig into something maybe nefarious that he was part of that he can't talk about. Maybe he's on his deathbed and He's like, this guy, he can dig into it and find. I mean, kind of like the dirty bomb stuff. The little, I mean, do you think he was going that route too? It's like, this guy's smart. I trust him. Man, there's more. I need. There's more layers to this onion. I'm not going to be around long enough to put it out there. Nobody's going to believe me anyway because I'm a homeless dude. This guy's not. He can dig into it, and you kind of did. But did you feel that way when he talked to you about it? And do you still kind of feel that way? Where there's still more there to dig up, because I felt like you were trying to do that with me, with just the nefariousness of the U.S. government. I mean,
Yeah.
I came across that way, and at least I felt I came across that way in the Giant Killer. I meant to. I didn't try to hide that, but I kind of felt like that's where you were going, man. I was like, man, there's stuff here. There's more to this that this little guy knows, and he wants me to uncover it.
You know, honestly, Chris, that is the first time someone's ever pitched that to me, and it does start now. No, am I stupid? Like, no, but I'm like, maybe that's kind of really, he wasn't sort of saying, get my story out. Maybe he was like, hey man, I know you're a detective. I know I'm going to start telling you all these facts. Now the thing, so here's the most important part. I would hope Richard didn't know, but he was killed 10 days after making that revelation in a hit and run. So we were going over his life story information. And at the time, like I can tell you exactly what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking what Chris was thinking, but then again, I didn't know he was going to get killed. I was just thinking about taking some information to some reporter. So I would jot down stuff that he told me, stuff I would remember. And he would just, say, so where were you at this point? How did you get into the military? Who is this? How did you feel about that? So we were met all that week, and he was just really unfolding his story. So a lot of Richard's story, with a lot of the, some of the little pieces he told me, and a lot of it was, I got really lucky after the documentary. Not lucky. What happened was a whole bunch of people came out of the woodwork after the documentary. So you picture in 2017, 2018, I got all these people and they got all this information, and it's a lot of CIA stuff and it's a lot of Black Ops stuff. And the vetting for that stuff, for me just trying to figure out who's pulling my chain and who's telling me, it was exhausting, that exhausting. But I did finally find a guy that was really good friends with Richard in the late 70s and 80s, and he really filled in those missing blanks that I didn't have, the Rhodesia and him doing undercover operations. There's he was in the documentary. I wanted that thing to be black and white, but I was already knowing that he was convicted of possession of a large amount of cocaine, and I believe this was 1980, 81. And in my mind, I'm thinking more Iran-Contra and everything, but I don't want to go there yet. And that's when this witness kind of came forward and said that, yeah, Richard was trading weapons for drugs in Costa Rica, and that the weapons were going to the Contras in Central America. And Richard made a real big speech about communism spreading in Central America. And his speech was, I know how fucked up it is for me to be, using drugs to help raise money for the Contras. But I was just in Vietnam, and I saw all my friends, all these American boots and all these people die and get blown up. Let the Contras fight. Let this, the people in Central and South America fight for their own countries. Let's not send Americans. Let's send weapons. Let's send money. Let's send everything but American boots on the ground. So, a lot of people say, well, how could your buddy have done that? He was involved in drugs. I'm not going to judge him. He just didn't want American boots. Obviously there were some Green Beret advisors in Central America during that time, but he didn't want conventional forces there getting caught in another quagmire. But I'm going to jump back again into that week. What Chris is saying, yeah, he certainly let a lot of breadcrumbs. He certainly left a breadcrumb of. He told me where his unit was, where he kept all his things. He had a little locker where he kept all his things, and he showed it to me. And when he passed, that's where I found everything. That's where I found the passports of him traveling all over the world. And so the revelation is, after he was killed, okay, this is the most incredible story, but it ended in the 70s and 80s. No, it didn't. He was still traveling. He was close to 70 years old, all over the world, Venezuela. He was in Iraq he was in, but I found out in Iraq he was a private. I finally met another military guy who ran into Richard at a base, and
Recognized.
Richard was recognized me. One guy you can't forget, and Richard talked to him for a whole long time, and he knew everything about Richard's background and growing up. So it was 100% the real deal. That's what he was doing in Iraq. But he was in Amman, Jordan. He was in Thailand. He was in Venezuela, and he was all over the country. I talked to Chris about Norfolk. North Dakota. He was in North Dakota there in the middle of the winter at the exact same dates. So there was just so many weird things about this guy's life. The question, do I think there's more? I think there's a million more things. I made a joke to Chris when I think after we finished filming it, I was like, man, if I ever have to go to Venezuela or Iraq or Oman, would you come with me, Chris, and watch my back? He goes, yeah, maybe, we'll see.
I did.
Because I wouldn't go, because you stay in your lane. That's a world that I don't have enough experience in, and I wouldn't go to any of these countries without a really well-trained special forces guy.
I went to Costa Rica actually the year after. I just disappeared for a while. I got so tired. I just jumped anti-kidnapping contract and I just shot over there. And yeah, it is. You stay with it. When you're in those countries, it's funny. You'd see the Americans that are on their tours, and I'm walking around by myself and and it's just blending in. But it's still pretty dangerous, man, over there. My thing with the I want people, we got into it, but I want people to know, because I know there's people out there with questions like, this guy's doing all this stuff. How did he remain homeless? Well, how? Well, I mean, you're as a military contractor, hey man, I know how much money we were making, especially in those days. We were making a lot of money traveling. It sounds like he's still employed. Somewhat employed. He's making enough money that he could be off the streets, but he was still homeless.
Yeah.
Why? Man?
So great. Listen, that's probably the number one question on all my social media, because I'll post a story about, hey, this is my homeless Green Beret friend, and you see so much vitriol and anger and like, oh my God, this country sucks and fuck America, and they fucked them. And listen, there was a lot of mistakes made with Richard Flaherty, with the government, with the VA. But his problem wasn't financial. It was PTSD. It was survivor's guilt. Maybe partially he was trying to stay off the grid because he was paranoid, because he was still doing stuff. But a lot of it, and I think in the documentary you said that, some of it might have been his own personal choice. And that's exactly what it was. He did have cousins in Connecticut that said, Richard, come live with us. We can't have our cousin living on the street. But a story like the Flaherty stories constantly come in, and, I do my vetting, and I got the greatest Flaherty story that really opened my insight. Some guy who grew up in the same neighborhood with him, this was 73, went to Miami Beach, 1973, a bunch of guys, Richard was from Stamford, Connecticut, went to go party in South Beach in 1973. So one of the guys who's telling me the story didn't know Richard. He didn't know him from the neighborhood, didn't know. He just heard one of the guys from the neighborhood's going to actually meet us there too. So there's a knock on the door at this apartment that they're renting in Miami Beach, 1973. He opens the door and there's a kid. There's this tiny little kid standing there. Now, Richard is a 25-year-old Green Beret Silver Star at that time, but this guy opens the door. All he sees is a tiny 4'9" kid. And the guy says, no, I'm Richard. I'm supposed to be partying with you guys. They go out that night, they go drinking in South Beach, and they're having a great time, and they're going to bars. And there's even a story of that night they saw B.B. King was playing on stage, and Richard got drunk and jumped on stage, was actually dancing with B.B. King. Great story. But so they said at the end of the night, they were taking a cab back home, and the craziest thing, Richard told them there was a park, and I know they told me which park it is in Miami Beach. They said, Richard told them, let me out here. They're like, Richard, what? We're going to go back to the apartment to sleep. Richard didn't feel comfortable sleeping in the apartment. He wanted to sleep inside the park. So here he's only 23 years old, and that PTSD, that paranoia that was already set in. So think about as that thing really bakes in as he gets older. Yeah. And there's stories, it's pretty tragic. There's some stories of people who saw Richard sleeping outdoors on the tree, having nightmares, screaming, and they thought somebody was being murdered, but it's just Richard having a flashback. So, a lot of it was his PTSD, but we have a criteria in Florida where a person is just a danger to themselves. They're not mentally well enough to take care. And that's when, as a police officer, I'm allowed to force them into a shelter or see psychiatric help. Richard could answer basic questions. He was feeding himself. So yeah, he was really deeply disturbed and troubled, but that was his decision. Now, was he out there just, Richard used to leave little traps. I'm the only one who knew, like, when you approach Richard, that there's traps. He would leave leaves. There was always a can with rocks inside. You were never getting near into Richard's perimeter without him knowing, and he would wake up. So, I mean, he was always staying safe. But I mean, there was that, I forgot which, I don't know, maybe it was Roosevelt said, an enigma wrapped in a mystery, wrapped in a puzzle. That was Richard Flaherty. He was just, there's so many layers of mystery to him. But as far as the homelessness goes, where is the money? Like, he was doing some pretty big
Yeah.
things, some private military contract work. He did legitimately work for Bushmaster Rifles in the late 70s, and that's where some of his relationship with the Venezuelan higher officers and generals, that I later learned that Richard would travel and sell them arms legally through the U.S. That a lot of his relationships started there. Where is all that money? I mean, I don't know. I know he was sending money. I used to, I have all his records, so I can see that he always kind of maintained a small bank account, but it was always pretty steady. But he was sending money to Thailand, and I actually sent a private eye to try to figure out who that person was, and it was a
Really?
female. It was a female, middle-aged female. And the weird thing is, when the private investigator started going to the apartment looking for this person, they found out she went to Germany. She told them that she's leaving the country to Germany just at that same time. So I don't know, what was really going on.
Hey guys, hope you're enjoying this interview with David Yuzuk, talking about his good friend, the late Richard Flaherty. Watching that documentary, I sure learned a lot, and I learned more just talking to David Yuzuk here. With that, every single show we do is brought to you by Fort Scott Munitions. And is this the longest you've gone without being able to hit the range, or have you hit the range
Yeah,
yet?
man. No, I mean, I haven't. There was a picture of me where a couple of day I posted, but that was me at the range right before surgery. So no, I'm looking forward to it. But I got a private course coming up, and then I've got a public course coming up in a couple weeks. So I'll be right back at it. And man, I just went and picked up some more of my range ammo. So guys, if you want the best ammo out there, whether it's for home defense or just going and planking at the range, you got to go Fort Scott Munitions. There's nothing even close. And now with the range ammo, you don't have to spend that pretty penny for your home defense ammo. You can get it still the same quality. You're just spending less money, and it's all lead free. And a lot of ranges in America now, they require lead free. So, hey man, go check out Fort Scott Munitions. And they're just a great company. They've been with us since day one. And I love those guys over there. Just great guys.
Absolutely. I love Fort Scott. I love when I get over there and talk to the guys at the
Yeah.
company. Ryan Kraft, everyone there is awesome. Gage. But
Yeah.
now I'm wondering, so you have not shot a gun in the past 2 weeks. Is this the longest in your adult life that you've gone without shooting?
I tell you, no, you know what? When the movie came out, I put the gun away for 6 months. I didn't shoot for six months straight.
Crazy.
And,
I couldn't
well,
even imagine that with you. I mean, for
I
you,
know.
just shooting it would be like, me not drinking water for 6 months or something.
Well, it really, it just was, I was busy doing other things, and I just didn't have time. And then when I was home, I was like, man, I do not want to go get my stuff. And I lived in Nebraska at the time too, where I had to drive a few hours, or not a few hours, but 30 minutes to a range. If I lived in Fort Scott at the time, probably not, because I'm 30 seconds from the range. So yeah, that had something to say. But yeah, I haven't been able to. But next week I'll be right back out there and out there planking, and it's just beautiful. This time of year it's starting to cool down a little bit now, and it's in the 80s. It's still warm, but it's wonderful, man. So I can't wait to get out there. And I already got my Fort Scott Munitions ammo, and I'll be out there shooting with Max and Defense weapon systems and my Glocks and whatever else I want to take out there. Spikes Tactical, great stuff too, and be out there planking with the Dakin heating and air execs that are coming out to shoot with me. So it's going to be great, man.
Nice. Yeah, I could tell Chris is getting antsy. I mean, I've worked with special operations veterans and snipers and that type of thing. And some of those guys go months and months without shooting, and then they'll do a course or
Nah,
something. You are not
nah,
that guy. You're out there getting
nah.
better every single day and training every single day. So I know you're not used to this. But with that, shoot with the best ammo, and that's Fort Scott Munitions. Use the promo code BATTLELINE at checkout. You'll get 15% off your order at fsm.com. Promo code BATTLELINE for 15% off. With that, let's get right back to our man, David Yuzuk.
So weird. So weird.
Yeah, and
Weird.
you
Ian,
you did a
I'm
good.
not, go ahead, Ian, man. I'm not stepping on you, dude. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. I was just gonna say I thought you did a really good job too of expressing like the full picture of who this guy was. Because you even had, and you did explain some of that in the movie, having some relatives there that like they did try to bring him in and it was
Yeah.
just too crazy. And then you even had those guys who served with him at the beginning of the film. And they were like, yeah, the guy was kind of an asshole. They were like, he pointed a gun at my face. And so which I thought was important because you could have painted this picture of he's a hero, he, is forgotten,
Yeah.
but you gave the full picture. You were like, hey, there were people who thought he was this arrogant prick, honestly. There were people who loved working with him and respected him. So I thought you did a good job of all that. So what I'm wondering then is
I'm going to add another story. I'm not
Yeah,
shitting on my friend
go for it.
Richard. I'm not shitting on
No,
my
no,
friend
no, I
Richard.
think you're being
I'm telling the
honest, though.
truth. I'm being honest.
Yeah.
I'm telling the truth. And
definitely.
I'm not judging. There's a very similar story that it's in the documentary and it's in the book. It's explained a little bit better, and it's very similar to the lone survivor story, where two platoons were on a mission straddling a river. Richard's on one side. They took some prisoners, but they were in one of the most dangerous parts of the village where they've been there a whole bunch of times. They're always getting attacked. They're always losing men. And Richard was like, "Look, man, they got to go and let's finish the mission." And the other guys didn't want to do it. And I certainly could have cut that out, but that sort of was that lone survivor thing that, they were in a firefight. A couple enemy combatants were still alive. All right, what do we do with them? We take them with us, they blow our cover, or do they just go? So Richard's like, look, man, we gotta, let's, help them out and let's keep going. So I left that in there because exactly what you said. I didn't want to make it American Pie. I didn't want to sugarcoat.
Yeah.
I wanted to show it. So another Richard story that just came in, and a guy wrote me a really deep letter of he respected Richard, loved Richard, but he thought Richard in Vietnam sometimes was pretty heavy on the enemy. And it was something that Richard's recon unit, which I've heard similar stories to this, but I didn't get the full. This guy knows the whole story. They were sent to an island. There was a bunch of VC that were on the island, and they were cornered and they were trapped. And I guess the higher ups thought that Richard's unit would kind of, take some of them out and capture some of them. And then not one of them made it back. None of the VC guys made it back. And that guy is saying, man, those guys must have been ready to give up. I can't believe that they fought to the end. But I was like, it is what it is. I was never in his boots, and yeah, Richard was tough on the enemy.
Yeah, no, and you expressed that in the film. I thought was
Yeah.
great. Well, what I was
And
going
listen,
to ask,
and
though,
maybe a drop of that PTSD is, he did talk about, in the movie about, they were being shot at from a bunch of enemy from a spider hole. Either it was Richard or one of his guys threw a grenade in there. After it exploded, Richard went into this little spider hole, and it's two women, VC women. And it just he wrote it in a letter. It really fucked them up because one was gone, the other was still alive, but in really bad shape. And her purse was open, and there's a picture of her family. And it's just, if you're a human being, you want to compartmentalize that stuff during war. But if you're a human being, even as a cop, and I've seen nothing, even in a drop compared to Chris and some of those guys. But some of the things I've seen, like, it's the weirdest thing. You're not thinking any bad thoughts. You had a good day. You're about to go to sleep, and bam, you just see something that, I don't know, from 2 years ago that you saw that was pretty horrific, and it just pops into your mind, and you sit with it for a little bit and you hope it goes away. But it's, I can see how that shit can rebound on you every once in a while.
It does. It does. And before I do want, because I know I want to hear what Ian's question is, because I'm interested, because I know it's going down a road that I think the same way. But my comment on that is that it never goes away. You're always going to have a smell or something that flashes. And I don't call them flashbacks, because I think that's a term that's used way too much. But it's thing that you're going to remember, and it's not a bad thing. I think the men and women that have issues are the ones that try to forget. And I tell you, you can't forget. Just let it come. And like you said, let's get out. Let's remember. Let's think. Let's get through it. All right. It'll pass, and then it'll come again eventually. And eventually you just have to realize that was living. That's the life we chose. And and it's just how it is. But with Richard, I'm sure with stuff like that, I'm sure it finally started to eat at him, especially being alone by yourself, homeless or not, being alone by yourself. It is harder to handle. It will eat you up because that becomes your friend. That darkness, instead of having a friend or a wife or a son or a daughter that you can, that darkness, that evil thought or whatever, that's your friend now because you got nobody else to talk to. So that's just my 2 cents on that. But
listen, Richard never would talk about this, but it is 100% true. You're treated different if you're 4'9", and I guess you can go to little people out there. It wasn't like he had, I just really don't want to play him a victim because he never allowed himself to be a victim. But the guy that hung out with him, that guy who was a tough as fuck, almost cried at how he saw people treating him, how disrespectful people were, how people laughed at him behind his back, how he just Richard never had a day of peace where somebody had to make a joke about his size. Forget what he did in the military, forget all that stuff. The guy just never had a normal date. And even I'm sure Richard had 2 loves of his life, but I'm sure, those are special women that a lot of women were not going to talk to a 4'9" guy. So it wasn't like, life was, he was a military guy and he was, life was great after the military. So, he had some rough breaks. His first fiance tragically was killed in a 1-car accident. After the war, he came back to Stanford and he opened a clothing store. He gave a shot in clothing and he met his future fiance and they ended up moving to Miami. And I think in 6 months later, she was killed in a 1-car accident, just driving. And there was nothing nefarious there. And before we end this, the $1 million question is going to be, okay, Richard tells you his life story. 10 days later, he gets killed in a hit and run. Was it a hit? Okay. At this point, I've never found. I've heard the person who hit him ended up working for another police department, not as a police officer. She was a civilian employee, court stenographer.
I didn't realize that. I didn't think, was that in the film? Or
yeah, that's in the film. Yeah, so
okay.
she's a civilian employee, court stenographer that worked for another police department. I did get, like I said, I do get these calls and I got this one, bro, it is a CIA hit. Let me give you the names. These are the people you follow up on. And it's so difficult because this guy had some really good information. Some of it was accurate and good. And then some was just pure bullshit. And he tells me the name of an agent, a CIA agent. It's like out of a movie name. It was like Osiris, Maximilius. And I was like, what sort of a bullshit name is? So I go on LinkedIn and I look up and I see this fucking name.
There's no Osiris Max.
No, that's not what the guy's name was. Something else. Okay. I don't want to give the guy's name. But I look on LinkedIn and then fucking lo and behold, ex-government. So I shoot him a thing on, I said, is any chance you work for the CIA? He goes, yeah, I did, He's like 90 years old, this dude, which is also another amazing thing. And he talked to me and no, I never heard of Richard Flaherty. I wasn't, because this guy's, no, that was his officer he was, reporting to. And, you need to talk to that guy. And I mean, what would be the point of the guy taking my call? And I don't know, but there's, I leave it up to people. I try to put even more information in the book than what was in the documentary to make up your own minds. But as a former detective, as a former law enforcement, I can follow conspiracies up until the point where I got to find evidence. If I don't have the hard evidence, I can't make that, final call. So until I see that hard evidence at this point in time, it's just really bizarre timing, really bizarre situation that he was killed in the hit and run.
Yeah, that is what I liked about the documentary too, is that you weren't trying to shove an agenda down anyone's throat. There are people who probably will watch this and go, I think he exaggerated a little bit. And then there are other people who watch that won't have that idea. But anyway, the original question I was going to ask you was, when did the idea of making this into are you all right, Chris? There you go.
Stand by.
Cut that. Oh my gosh. That coffee went down the wrong
assassinated
side.
I don't want something else to happen to somebody.
I know. It could be like all the ones connected with David Yuzuk.
Yeah, something bad. Somebody, they got Chris.
Put in my coffee.
Fucking Putin got him. put that poison in there.
All right,
So,
go
all
ahead,
right,
go ahead, Ian. We're
no,
going to
it's
get to your
cool.
question, Ian. We promise
know.
we're going to get to Ian's
What-
question.
So,
All right, go ahead, Mike.
when did the idea of putting out a documentary come about? Because also, I will say before before I actually tuned into it on Amazon Prime, just knowing that you had mutual friends with Bobby Myers, honestly, in terms of like the film, I wasn't expecting much. I was expecting to look like a very much made at home type,
Yeah.
short film. This is extremely well done for a guy whose background is in policing, not in documentary filmmaking. So, how did it all come about? And when did you say, with all this information I have like the most amazing subject, let's make a documentary?
So you remember, he gives me this mission, to get my life story. But I thought the mission was he gets killed, and it's over. Like, okay, he wanted me to talk about his transition and find a news reporter. So what? But then I think it was when we found the storage unit. And I think it's when I found the passport. And I think it was when I was like, oh shit. Maybe it was something like what Chris said. Maybe he was feeding me these breadcrumbs. Maybe he was thinking to himself, shit, time's running out. This guy seems all right. He seems like he's a stupid guy from Brooklyn, but maybe he's a decent detective. Maybe he can figure out and put some of the pieces and get some of this story out. And, his stories is also the story of all those Vietnam vets. I didn't just tell Richard's story in the book or in the movie. I told the story of all these vets who came home to a country that didn't welcome them and all the things that affected them. And I try to, try to put as much detail. But when did the idea come to me? I think it was after I found the stuff in the storage locker. And I just said, like, I think I can pull this off. Let me give it a shot. And that was a dumb idea. It was really because like, okay, it seems like, like you can do it. And then I remember at the end of like 2 years of filming and I had 40 or 50 hours of video. I'm like, now what do I do? Like, how do I take 50 hours of video that has no timeline of me just interviewing? Because there was no, like, usually I think when people do documentaries, they write out what they're going to do, who they're going to interview, what direction. I was just kind of going, one day at a time. So, there were a lot of times I just wanted to quit. I was like, man, this is impossible, but I couldn't quit because of Richard. I kind of made him that promise. That was always the thing always pushing me is like, I kept hearing his voice saying, hey man, can you get my story out to the world? Hey man. And I'm like, I saw my friend dead on the side of the road. I saw his body. He was like you hit a dog in a road, you just leave it and nobody gives a shit. Like this human being who did so much, this amazing human being who beat the odds, who did everything that people say is impossible. Special forces, Green Beret at 4'9". How do we just forget his story and let it die on the side of the road? If nobody's going to tell it, nobody, then I got to do it, So I kind of just said, fuck it, man up and try to get it done. So, when we first premiered the movie in his hometown, Stanford, I was so nervous because I'm like, man, did I tell my friend's story? Because his story and what he accomplished is so amazing. It's only for me to fuck up and not get right. Or the same thing when I wrote the book. Like if people don't write the book, that's not because Richard didn't live the most amazing life and do the most incredible thing and the most high. It's because I fucked it up. I didn't tell the story right. So it's a lot of pressure, but I kind of try to think to myself now, look, bro, do as much as you can, and then whatever happens, happens. And I'm starting to try to adopt that philosophy because it's just better for your health.
Yeah, well, on the technical aspect of it, I remember when I showed up to do mine, it was just you. I mean, you don't, as far as I know at that time, and even, I mean, it's not like you were trained for, you weren't a trained filmographer, you weren't a trained camera. I mean, you had all this stuff up, and you're that's what's saying the video, the documentary is extremely professional, like a whole team from Paramount Pictures put it. I want people to realize when I went in there, it was just him. Yeah. And I'm looking at, because at that time I was used to, there were multiple people.
There's a team and a sound guy and a lighting guy.
Yeah, I could. So when I showed up to his, I'm used to, there's got to be, there's a person yelling speeding and check, and you got all these people with the sound, and it's just you. And,
bro, it was.
I mean, how did you do that? And then the editing too. How did you learn that, dude? How did you get it?
I just banged my head against I heard Rich's voice in the back of my head every time I wanted to give up. there's a million times I wanted to give up, and I just heard Richard's voice in the back of my head. But I'll give you, if you want to think me and you sitting in a room in a nice hotel doing the interviews, bro, there's aerials in that documentary.
Yeah.
I'm driving a car and flying a drone at the same time because it's just me. There's
Oh,
like,
I
there's
didn't know
in,
that. Oh,
yeah, like
shit.
in the
I didn't know.
swamps, you'll see like when I'm flying
Yeah.
through the ever. That's me flying the fucking thing, driving the van. A lot of the voiceover, and shit, all of my voiceover, I do the voiceover for the whole movie. I was in a studio. I learned on YouTube. You build your closet with all sorts of soundproofing and clothes and surround yourself and get a mic. And I would record myself. Then I'd run down to my computer and try to see if I can stick it into the little spot where, you know, something was happening in the documentary. So, yeah, Chris, trial and error, man. This wasn't talent. I wish I had talent. I wish
Oh,
I
you
had some
definitely have
training.
talent, man.
Oh,
No, no,
you
no,
got- you
no, no,
do,
no,
bro.
guys,
You-
listen, a monkey, if you put a bunch of monkeys in a room with typewriters, they could eventually, so I'm a monkey banging against a wall. Eventually I was going to get it right because I would refuse to give up on my friend. But that wasn't talent. That was just, I couldn't give up on telling my friend's story. But that was just a million mistakes, trial and error, and just maybe that's the lesson, the best lesson I can tell anyone who's listening to this, because so many, you know, military guys, police officers, you have great stories and like, hey, but how do I tell a story? And bro, just do it. Don't be afraid. Just do it. Just tell your story. Just write it out. Just talk in a recorder. The hardest thing is taking that first step forward on anything, on any project that you want to take on. And the other thing is, bro, you're going to fuck up. You're going to fail. Don't ever think you're going to do a project and it's going to be beautiful. And it's going to be, just accept that you're going to learn on the job and that you're going to just try to do the best you can.
And you have a second career though. I mean, for all those out there, you should be putting yourself out there as a technical advisor. So if somebody needs to do a video like you did, they can call you, and you don't have to charge $1 million, but you should. I mean, if you're good at something, you should make something off it. But I'll be honest, you should, man. You should be out there. This is how you should do it, and I'll come help you with it for 2 weeks, or I'll teach you how to do it, because it did the final project, the final, you know, the final cut. It was very, very well done. You wouldn't think a Bronx police officer that had never shot a documentary or done any movie in his life had did it, because it was so well done. And
Thank you.
that's just, you know, I know that's me just giving kudos to you, brother. But my next thing is going in and moving on is, and I remember the reason is because I told this to you. I remember when I walked in, I said, "Are you sure you want me on?" I don't know if you remember this. I said, "You sure you want me on this? Because you're going to get people they're going to see Tonto on there." And at that time I was really outspoken. I mean, I was F Hillary, F Obama, F everyone in the government. I said, I don't know if you're going to be able to get it out there, just because people don't want it. They don't like Tonto. They don't like Oz. They don't like Tig. Benghazi is a far right wing conspiracy. That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
But did you run into that problem getting it? Because again, it took a few years for it to finally show up on the main, like Amazon Prime and Tubi and what's it, Pluto TV. It's another one that it's on, you know. And did you run into problems where you're like, they're like, people
You
don't want to
know,
hear it because of who you had on?
the thing is, my audience is similar to your audience, and that they're kind of grassroots. And my story is not, you know, especially the book is not a military story. It's a human being story. It's an incredible story. It's an underdog story. And then there's also the Vietnam War and has an incredible history. But, you know, like my audience loves you. I don't give a fuck. You know, it's like those people, like, you know, to tell a story right, you know, you just go to people for truth. I don't go for people for, you know, worried about that it was going to hurt anything, because like Ian said, man, I could have made my life 1,000,000 times easier and got it out faster if I cut out some of the,
if you had an
the
agenda,
rough stuff. Or I cut out
agenda.
some of that rough stuff and made Richard the, you know, American Pie, blah blah blah. You know, I could have made the story a lot more easy and friendly to everyone, but I just wanted to tell it the right way. And listen, Richard's life after the war and the private military contract work, I needed an expert, and I needed Chris to kind of walk me through it. And Chris is like, Dave, it's not unheard of guys in their 60s and they're not out in the field shooting and doing running and gunning and everything, but they're training. It's not impossible. You talked to me a lot about some of the stuff. And the other thing that was interesting when I asked Chris and what was, I was like, the only people Richard claimed that were after him, like most paranoid people will say, as a cop, every paranoid person said the CIA's after him. Richard didn't say that. Richard said the State Department was after him.
State Department, I remember that, man.
Yeah,
I was
Richard
like,
was
"What?"
saying like
Yeah.
the State Department dudes are always fucking with him and always sending him a message and always listen, I was going down a dark story with a dark, so I'll ride with fucking Chris any day. I'm not worried about any repercussions.
In the State Department, they are. I know one of my State Department buddies hit me up after. He goes, "Do you realize?" After you watch your video, he goes, "You know how they portrayed you in the movie?" I said, David didn't portray me as anyway. That's what I said. I
Yeah.
said, you guys are a bunch of shady bastards. So wouldn't put it past you if something like you guys conspired to do something like that. Because the State Department, they still are, in my opinion, they're a very shady organization that gets overlooked because when you think of shady government, you think of FBI, you think of CIA, think of NSA, but the State Department is the big conglomerate there in Rosalind that is controlling it all. It all falls. Really, they do.
They just get no bad PR. Like nobody ever hears, nobody ever talks. I didn't know shit about the State Department, but now I do. So it's like, listen, they got great PR people because you don't hear a thing about the State Department. I mean, you actually, the Benghazi was the first time you started hearing a little bit about Hillary and the State Department. But before that, no one ever heard anything, who the fuck even knew what the State Department did? So, listen, I come from the law enforcement world. Bad habits in law enforcement are culturally taught, and you need strong leadership, and you can't have sheep. And strong leadership means that you got to do what's right. I'm just going to step my toe into a drop of this. There was the shooting at Uvalde and everything. I understand why that happened because people started taking a sheep mentality. Any fucking officer, you hear shooting and there's kids, you go in there. Oh, you can't go in unless you're telling me there's a bomb around the whole building. And the minute you go in, you're going to kill those. I'm going in. We were all trained nonstop, and every police officer I know nonstop. You hear that gunfire, you're cannon fodder. You run in there, you eliminate, you distract the shooter. You don't wait outside. So that's a really bad cultural learning. Whatever those guys were talking shit in their lunch break room, they really were culturally sheep because nobody could think for themselves on their feet saying, fuck this is wrong. I'm going in there. No, you're going to get suspended. I don't give a fuck. This kid's being shot. Go in there. But I don't want to go into that.
No, but I get it though.
You're a little bit.
Yeah,
you're a guy who respects the profession that you are a part of, and I get it.
You listen. You being part of the military, you still have to have some sort of common sense and critical thinking as a human being. You can't be a sheep. So if something is wrong, you got to make the decision based on what you think is right. And sometimes people forget that, even in law enforcement. And I think in that day, that's what happened.
And it is. You're right. It's a cultural thing that comes around, and with piss poor leaders or leaders that yes men and women.
Yeah,
I don't know if they're. I shouldn't say they're not, because there are many that really are. They are strong. They are smart, but they've been reduced to a level where if you don't say yes, then you don't question. We're going to move you up. We say fuck up, move up. Well, that's on the guys on the ground. When you say yes all the time, you're screwing the guys on the ground. But you're going to move up, and that is where we're at now. And that is State Department. State Department, at least my experience with them, that's what they were. They were.
So you're basically getting a type of culture of reward and against risk that just it grew out of control, and the only way for that is you got to strip everything and start from the beginning. When you have some bad culture like that, where the going back to the law enforcement thing. Common sense should never, be put behind, the law. Common sense always got to come first. Like my job was to protect persons and property. Persons, 1,000 times further than property. And that's what I did. And sometimes protecting persons didn't mean just, burglary in progress, but talking to a young man and telling him, hey, bro, you're really fucking up and you're going to throw that weed in the sewer right now. And you're never going to fucking drive through my city with that shit on you. And if you want to smoke, sit in your fucking house and smoke, but don't blast your music and drive like a lunatic and have me catch you with, with that in your car. And some of those kids listened and some didn't.
And Richard being a homeless man, it's always shocked me that he is homeless. But I never heard you having, and I think I even asked you, you never really had any run-ins with it.
No,
which was to me was odd, because I would assume that you would have. I'd assume that being out there and being who he is, having the little man syndrome, but also being hard as nails, he's got to continue to prove himself. I was shocked because I remember I did ask you. I said, "Did you ever have any run-ins with him? Was he aggressive with you? Did you ever catch him or have to arrest him for being aggressive to another homeless person or somebody out?" And you never did, right?
Zero.
Never
He was so he laid so low. He flew so far under the radar. On top of the fact he told no one he was in the military. Think about he shouldn't be treated better. You should treat all human beings the same. But god damn, if we knew that this was a military vet, and that but he never did that to get an easier time, to get something to eat. He never did any of that, but he was as low key. Richard just didn't want anybody asking him questions or talking to him or looking into him or anything like that. It took me years of just saying hello to him slowly. I think our friendship was because, maybe it's the New York thing where you just don't go up to people and start asking them a million questions. That, just started off as mutual respect, and I never pressed him for his life story. Because if he wanted to tell it to me, he would. If not, we just shot the shit and talked about world politics and things like that. So he never was a problem. And now I'm gonna throw somebody else under the fucking bus for the first time in history. We did have one cop in Aventura, I'm not going to say his name, that did treat Richard very poorly, and it's disgusting. And thank God there was a sergeant that pulled that guy aside, and the sergeant had no idea Richard was a military guy, and but he pulled that guy and he said, "Do not fuck with the homeless," and that's all I'm going to say about that.
Well, you got to say it.
No, who the guy is, let him live with the shame. He knows who he is. He knows he's got to look in the mirror every fucking day, and and know that he treated a hero really poorly.
Yeah. No, and like I said, you did an amazing job honoring your friend with the movie, with the book. What were you going to say though, Chris?
Actually, I just had one more thing for David, and you may have been going that route already, but I just wanted to know what's next, and are you continually starting pushing the movie, or is it just getting picked up wherever it can get picked up? How does that work, brother?
I'll tell you what's next. This is part two. What's next is this one last thing I have to accomplish, so I can go off into the woods and live in a fucking cabin and look at trees all day. By the way, it almost looks like you. I'm in Miami. I'm in Florida. This bullshit. I got a dirty kitchen behind me. I got all sorts of things back there. I don't want your poor people.
I was looking at it like, you don't read that many books.
No, I ain't that smart. No. The last thing that it's going to happen. I don't know when. I don't know how. It's going to be a feature film. I'm going to make somehow whatever I got to do. I got to now fucking beg Chris to talk to Pablo to play me in the movie. I got to, first he was Chris and then he's me. No, I honestly, in my heart, I feel like that would be the last and final thing in my promise to him, that it can be brought as a feature film. I mean, fuck. I have a video of me walking in a park telling the story on YouTube. It's got 21 million views. Every other comment is, when's the feature film? When's the feature film? Well, I don't know Spielberg and anything like that. So I can't say when it's going to happen. I do every once in a while get contacted by some real people, but films take a long time. I'm so glad, Chris's story got out in 13 hours, got out, because it's a very difficult process, especially in our space when it's military or, whatever they think our political views are. It certainly makes it even harder. But I believe Richard belongs on the big screen. His story belongs on the big screen. And I hope someday somebody hears this podcast and takes up that challenge.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And it is, you have to, yeah. Sometimes it's just lucky. It's more than anything. It's just right. It's just timing. And well, I mean, 3 Arts was our representation. So maybe if you ever get a script, send it to 3 Arts Entertainment and send it to Richard Abate over there. And he's a New Yorker too. He's like, he ain't gonna give you no bullshit. He doesn't, and he's left wing as hell. He doesn't care if it's good. It's good. That's why I love.
As long as I can
love
tell
Richard.
him Chris is my best friend, and we hang out every day. I drink fucking Tanto vodka every day, motherfucker. I can't believe, I was like, fuck, why didn't I have a bottle of Tanto vodka? You motherfuckers watching this podcast better start drinking Tanto vodka. Support this man. This is a great man. It's a great vodka.
Man.
Support
I gotta
this man.
clip that for Ben Morgan. We gotta put that on Instagram.
Yeah, so that's the clickbait. You put a bottle fucking Tanto vodka. No, listen, the man did his time. He put out a great product. And what is it's for celebration. You sit there, you have a cocktail, you be a gentleman.
It is, and that's what it's. We're not going for the smearing off partying all the time.
No,
it's that crowd where, hey man, end of the day, it's just relaxing now by the beach. We're more of a chilling out, relaxing at the range, relaxing in the woods around the fire, having a little drink and enjoying ourselves. And you know what? We got a distributor in Florida down in the Boca Raton and the Naples area. So if we ever get down there, because you're in.
I'm in Miami.
Right?
Yeah, I'm in Miami. So
I
you
love that
come
area,
up a
by the
little.
way.
Yeah,
I told him I love Boca Raton, Delray
Raton.
Beach. I love that whole area.
Yeah.
And so if we do that, then we need to maybe cool to do like a showing of that some theater, then do a bottle signing. And,
absolutely.
Dude, and you know who else? You know who else is in that area? You know what'd be perfect? Andre Arlovsky.
Andre Arlovsky.
Bring him too.
Top team, American top team, Andre.
Yeah.
He's still fighting. That dude is still fighting.
Still fighting.
He retired. Didn't he retire, or did he come out of retirement again?
He just fought.
Did he? Because he
like
just
3
fought.
months
He
ago.
just fought. Yeah.
that
Less like a month ago.
Oh, you know what? I think that was.
I hit him up.
Yeah. I think Dana said.
I could understand that because I remember I even texted you, and it's unfortunate. I think he lost 3 in a row, or it may have even been more. And at that point, it's like, yeah, that's when you're not going to be fighting the UFC. They're probably going to bring you and retire in the UFC, retire on top.
Yeah,
exactly.
But
it's not like
he's the man.
He just did 10. I mean, he did close to 20. It had to be 10, 20 years. So that's a long ass time.
I would assume probably more.
Fighting. That is insane.
Yeah, he's the man. That would be a great event with all you.
I would love to. I would love to get together and
that'd be cool. I mean, I would attend that.
Yeah, you come down. We could do a show or something. We could.
Yeah, I'd love to get a couple of the old law enforcement guys, and let's do like a sort of military law enforcement appreciation night with Tanto vodka. That would be
cool.
We get
a roundtable show of all of us and Andre. That would be amazing. So the last thing I was wondering, not related to the book, not related to the movie, but actually because you brought it up with homeless situation, your policing situation, and experience, it would actually be kind of interesting to get into, or just give your take. I think when you were talking about him being treated poorly and that type of thing, homelessness, huge problem throughout the country right now, especially in certain states like Los Angeles. Yeah. What do you think should be done about that? And then also, we've seen so much vitriol towards the police for these isolated incidents. I mean, how can we repair that stuff? I know it's a big question, but you'd probably be the guy to
take the homeless situation. The truth about that situation is we really did slash too many budgets on mental health. There is not, like, as a cop, there's no place you have somebody who's out of his mind. Yeah, you could take, in Miami, we take him to a hospital and I hold him for 24 hours. Then he's right back on the streets. So why is there a mental health crisis? I don't know, but we need to get a little bit better treatment for those people, because you don't want them on the streets. You know, Richard Flaherty was an exceptional, and you know, everyone's, oh my God, I'm gonna go find the homeless. I saw the giant killer. I'm gonna find the homeless guy, bring him to my house. Guys, it's not always every guy you meet is not always Richard
Yeah.
Flaherty. Some people are, you know, having some really serious mental issues. Some are very dangerous.
Yeah.
I'm treat every human being nice, but don't be, you know, like, you know, kumbaya to every homeless person. So, we certainly got to work a lot better with getting them some sort of mental health, or at least some sort of facilities to put them in. You know, some of these people, I think, you know, when you see younger kids and, you know, you're just like, fuck, these are just lazy kids, don't want to work and want to live on the street. It's not like homeless. It's just like they think it's cool to just be hippies on the street.
Or
Hey,
oftentimes drug addicted with the fentanyl.
yeah,
you know.
yeah, it's certainly. But you know, hey, I say bring back fucking shop class. That's something they cut out of high schools. Bring back, you know, carpentry and all that stuff. Give these people something to do, keep them occupied. You know, that's the great stuff like UFC. You see when UFC gyms pop up, people from bad neighborhoods have something to do with themselves. So I just think keeping people busy, getting them some sort of, you know, mental treatment, can alleviate. You're never going to alleviate it all, and it's always, you know, there are some different circumstances, and some are just fucking assholes that are just really bad people, and they probably belong in jail. The thing about the jail is like, so I'm a cop for almost 20 years in Miami, and remember, it's not just the people I arrested. Sometimes we would transport our own prisoners. So we would transport to the oldest jail in the country at the time. I think they shut it down already, called Dade County Jail. And like, you go on that first floor, you bring your prisoner in, and you got to walk them through all the property and everything. And you're talking about a, you know, 100-year-old building, filthy and screaming, and smells like fucking every human waste you can think of. And that's not the bad part. Once in a while, you'd have to go up to the third floor. The third floor was like sort of their jail psych ward. Guys, there's nothing in the movies that can compare to the horror, the darkness, the shame, the blood, the human body part. It was just the most disgusting place. How the people who worked there didn't go insane. It was just the sad. It was, I don't know the answer to that, you know, like what was going on that third floor. You would hear, you know, maybe you go to an animal shelter, you hear that type of screaming, and you would hear and you'd smell it. It was just insanity. So it is a difficult, you know, we're talking about, and the first thing we talked about is keyboard warriors and stuff. If you never went to that third floor of the jail and gone to the psych area, man, you don't know shit about life and how difficult things can be for workers, for the people in there, for the people who should just be in some sort of rubber room hospital. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean they're in a cage with cement, smashing their heads against walls, and there's blood everywhere. It's just such a dark, thank God, man, I never have to go back in there. And I hated that part of the job. What was the question before I lost my
no,
fucking
but
mind?
that was it. I mean, it's like, what do we
What
do
do
we
we
do?
do?
You
Yeah,
said
and as
that
far
was,
as
that was
and
the
then the
vitriol.
other thing I was saying with the policing too, with like
Okay,
this
so number
negative.
one, number one, like, bro, like, all right, the assassination of Donald Trump happens. I don't want to fucking hear experts 2 hours later telling me what everyone did wrong. If you're a fucking expert, like, you know, or detective, wait for the fucking facts. Everybody they got to tell their story. Oh, I know what went around. Everybody's a fucking. What you do is you wait to see what the story is. So that's number one. I want to see law enforcement be a little bit more responsible. When I saw those people testifying, like, I don't know, nobody got demoted. Nobody. I was like, what? Like, this is the most disgusting. And I had a lot of Secret Service friends, and I'm sure they're all disgusted too. But that was a horrifying thing to see. Nobody taking responsibility. Nobody knows what's going on. Nobody gets in trouble. Like, what job can the president of the United States and some poor fucking fireman get killed? Nobody loses their job. Nobody gets demoted. How the fuck does that happen? So accountability first has to come from law enforcement. But after that, you know, like, the public's got to understand police work a little bit more. And the only way to do it is Watch those videos when they take the most leftist activists and they make them go through police training. In one day, how much those people honestly do understand how difficult it is, how the shoot, don't shoot scenarios are.
Yeah, I've seen those, yeah.
All those things. Like the amount of difficulty, like the problem the public doesn't realize is, well, why did the cops do this? Why did the cops do? Guys, we don't know when we get dispatched to a call. Just because you're saying you're going to a car accident, it could be a million things.
Yeah.
And it could change a million different ways. And there could be a million different parameters and things are happening. Everyone is like, it's so easy to Monday morning quarterback something that you already know what with the real. Oh my God, it wasn't a real gun. It was a 10-year-old kid with a fake gun, and the cop shot him and they should have stopped earlier. We don't have that information before. I hold law enforcement to be professional. Don't ever act out. I don't like to see law enforcement on social media talking shit back. If you're a police officer and you're in your fucking uniform, you're active, I don't want to hear you on social media. Go out and be professional. Fuck the public. Fuck what they're saying. Be professional for you. You don't have to be professional for them. You don't have to be there standing. You go out and do the best job you can. You signed up for it. You signed up for one of the most difficult jobs in the world. Be a man, be a lady, go out there and be professional for you. You don't need a book of ethics to tell you how to be. If you got to go to a fucking ethics class, you shouldn't be a cop. If you don't know what the difference between right and wrong, that you fucking don't smack somebody in handcuffs, or you don't take a person who's got mentally ill and you arrest them because you're fucking bored. If you don't know that shit, then you shouldn't be a cop. But 99% of the people I work with were good people. And it's a tough job.
Well, you just said, you just circled back, just be accountable. Be accountable
Yeah.
for yourself. Be accountable for your actions. Have
Be
some
professional.
integrity. And be professional.
You
Yeah,
put on
yeah,
that
no,
uniform. You don't need your sergeant to tell you to go out and do a good job and act normal and be, be human. I don't give a shit how nasty the people were. And I fucked up a few times too, and I'm no fucking angel.
Well, it's hard.
But,
It's hard.
But,
You're human.
try to
You gotta
reset
get-
yourself. Every call, like we call calls, like you dispatch to different things.
Sure.
You have to reset yourself. When I walk up to a scene, somebody goes, fuck you, you fucking pussy cop. Without that gun, you're blah, 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 blah. He's not talking to me, David. He's talking to a uniform. He's talking to an incident he had 3 years ago with a cop, or his cousin got arrested. Don't take that shit personal. You're a robot. Mentally make yourself a robot. Just be professional. Show up. Whatever they say, whatever they do, as long as they don't put hands on you, you're fine.
Sure. That's great. And honestly, when you act like that to somebody who's angry with you and you act stoic and you act like this doesn't bother you, it honestly affects them. My opinion, when I've done it the other way, where I haven't retorted back, not being a cop, but just an altercation may have been in, it actually makes them feel worse.
Yeah, it does. It does.
It does. It really does. Yeah, because you're like, your words aren't doing anything to me. Just keep being. It does. It makes them feel. It almost belittles them, but you're not trying to. But it does, and it has a greater effect than them getting a reaction, because they're looking for that reaction, and you're not giving it to them.
Yeah. And then that's going back to Andre and training and everything. I do believe in law enforcement must have proper training and defensive tactics. And defensive tactics aren't just the cop can be offensive, is that the cop stays calm. Because if you know how to handle yourself in any situation, especially a physical situation, you won't be level 10. I've been on a few scenes where I've seen cops so screaming and I'm like, and I know what that is. They're nervous. They're like, brother, don't be scared. Go do some training, go do some wrestling, do some boxing, do something to calm yourself down. The reason why you're at a level 10 is you don't trust your own ability to handle the situation. If you do, you wouldn't have to scream and yell at people and blah, blah, blah. You can, I always approach whatever the situation is on level 1. I walk into a domestic violence and people screaming and motherfucker, sir, I don't know what's going on. My name's Officer Yuzuk, blah, blah, blah. Can we start? Blah, blah. Start at 1, because if he says, hey, motherfucker, what are you doing in my house? And I go, fuck you, I'm a cop. And
you got nowhere to go. You're already there.
There's nowhere to go. You're in battle.
Yeah.
But if you start at 1, he's at 10, and you start at 1. Yeah, you could if he goes crazy and you gotta go hands on. Of course, you can get up to level 10 too. But you always start at 1, no matter what the situation is.
Yeah,
There's
well
some
said.
place to meet in the middle. We were taught that way too, bro. That's it.
Yeah.
Within security and protective is you always want to be that way. You find your way, or eventually you maybe at one, and they're going to come down, and hopefully you meet at one. But even if you meet at 5, at least you're not meeting at 10. And that's a perfect way to say it. Perfect.
And if sometimes you just let them blow off some steam and shit for a little bit, and they calm down. Just let them blow it off. Let them blow it off. I'll take a step back, 2 steps back. I can't put myself in a dangerous position, but I can take a couple of steps back for anybody on earth. The one thing they don't teach you in life, and I've been in a couple, is you only have so many fights in you. And you never know when that number runs out. Like my number ran out. I got too many injuries. My back's fucked up. My hands, I broke my hands, my shoulders. No one ever told me that someday. So I wasted a lot when I was young, but you only have so many fights in life. Use them wisely.
Yeah. You can't wrestle everybody.
No.
You just can't do it. You can't do it. It's impossible. No, well said.
Save them.
Well said.
Save
Well
them.
said. Well said.
It's funny. I was just gonna say, man, even though David may have lived in the Florida area for decades, like you are clearly as New York as it gets. I think anybody who listens to this interview will feel that way. I had one other question actually that was running through my mind when I was talking about you were talking about the homelessness situation, and then I spoke about the drug situation. So there's just one last thing I was wondering, and you'd probably be the guy to ask. That area that you live in, just because I know the South Florida area pretty well, I love it there. Like Delray Beach, once again, Boynton Beach, that whole is infamous for drug rehab centers. And I know people who've been in and out of those drug rehab centers in that area. Actually, there was a girl when I went to my trip to Israel in 2004, who unfortunately was an awesome girl, Emma Carr, who lived in that area and was one of those girls back and forth throughout rehab, and then eventually overdosed. I've spoken to people in this area about the amount of drug issues in that South Florida area, and I've heard some people say that they think, and this is why I'd like to hear your take, because maybe this is conspiracy theory realm, but they'll like these drug rehab centers, they put these people in jobs where they get reintroduced back to that life, working in the restaurant industry and stuff, where they get back into drugs. And people have said that the rehabs intentionally do that so that they're always, overflow of people. Is that crazy talk or any truth to
I
it?
think it's a drop far, but I do think that happens a lot. And I think because sometimes the counselors start moving up, people who had an issue start moving up. But yes, and remember, we are a lot of the, nightclub restaurant industry in Florida, and it is really prevalent drug use. It's really tough. I know about all those clinics that you're talking about, and they are more.
It's such a beautiful area. It's where you would want to send a family member to
I'll
get
tell you,
treatment.
I'll tell you, listen, I learned, the one thing about me is, and the thing, especially with Richard, is I don't know shit, and I'm always willing to learn, and I'm always humble, and I'm always willing to listen to anyone, whether it's a tiny homeless man or anybody who has anything to say, or even there's a show, and I don't want to promote other people's shows, but the show on I don't know, some TV channel called Intervention. And they show you.
I think everybody's heard of Intervention,
right? All right, so they show you these people, and in my mind, I'm like, there's no way you can save this person. They're too violent. They're too drugged up. And then at the end of the show, like, some of them don't make it. Some of them, they do the intervention. They go to those facilities like you talk, and it's another human being, and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe what I put my family through. I can't believe they stayed with me. And you're looking at physically another human being that's woken up from a coma of insanity. And I'm like, oh my God, I would have given up on these people. And like, there's no way you can fix them. But thank God there are experts and there are clinics like that, because you watch that show, guys, if you think, or if you have a family member that's struggling with some sort of addiction, if you think that, I'm sorry, I move around because of my back, but if you think that they can't be saved, watch that show, because I'm like, there ain't no way they're fixing this human being. And then, holy shit, you see them, like, they'll do this thing like 2 years later, their face fills out, their skin clears up, they're talking normal. And these are the most nasty, angry, prostitution, beating people, just like the worst dregs of society. And you see when the drugs are pulled away, or the alcohol, the exposure of an actual human being, what an incredible, like, oh my God, that thing, it just blows my mind because, you know, you just fuck, especially as a cop, you get a drop cynical. You're like, nah, you can't save that person. There's no way. There's no way. And then the family just refused to let go and refused to give up hope. And
Yeah, I mean, these drugs, when you do see the problem going on across the country, like I said, with fentanyl and all that, like these are
yeah,
literal demons. This is
yeah.
like literally Satan.
I dealt with the age of bath salts back in my day.
I
I
remember that.
remember,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember that.
Bro, fucking bath salts were turned humans into zombies. I get a call one night at the hospital. I'm working. When I say call, as a police officer dispatched to the hospital for a patient going crazy. Now the hospital has their own security, but for some reason the security won't go anywhere up in that room. So they're blasting on the radio, priority, nurse being attacked, and I'm what, you know, usually you wait for your backup, but sometimes you just got to go. Like, remember I said earlier, sometimes you don't know what's going to happen, you just go. You know, that's part of your fucking job, that you're getting paid a decent salary, and maybe you get shot in the face or maybe not, but you got to do your job and go. So I just went, and I get into this room, and nurse runs by me, a chunk of her face is bitten off, and she's crying. I'm like, oh my God, what am I going into? Like, a human being's face is bitten off. And there's just a dude, skinny little 150-pound, maybe 22-year-old dude on bath salts. One of his arms was clearly broken and flopping, and he's trying to hit me with the broken arm. He's trying to bite me, and he's got the strength of, you know, like 3 men. And thank God one of our largest officers, I'm 230 pounds at the time, but we had a really, and even the two of us, it is just shocking. But then again, like, this guy's joints were popping and breaking, and he just didn't feel it. But it is horrific because, like, he's trying to bite my face. And there's some really ugly things out there.
Yeah, mental. Yeah, I don't think there's an answer with mental health, because there are more on the streets, but there are cutting funds to it to try to fight it. But then again, when they do add the funds to it, like when we did have more mental health, then you have the places like you did with the police hospital, where they're just putting them in cages. So I wish I had an answer to that. From hearing you, and listening to you again, it just re-verified to me that we don't have an answer for it yet.
I don't want to, you know, I want to stay positive. I want to believe that we can get ourselves out of it. Like, look, I'm not picking on any city, but you see, like, San Francisco, you're like, what the fuck?
I know.
How do we turn that place? How do we turn that place normal? How do we allow people to start going to work again? How do we get people to stop shitting on the streets? And how do we break that? Oh my God. It's like, what do you do with those people? They're almost feral at that point. Like, how do we, I don't know. It's past me. Some younger, smarter guy is hopefully out there that can, and guys, never give up hope. And I don't want any negativity, because I see too much of that stuff. Like I said, from the first fucking second we started this, everybody try to do something, try to do a little bit. If there's somebody watching this thing that maybe has an idea of how to fix this problem, try to implement it, try to do something. You know, don't just all of us, you know, give up. But I'm giving up. I can't do shit. I'm gonna leave it to the young guys.
Yeah, I doubt it, but you still got a lot in you. But
I'll try, man. I'm gonna try.
It's tough.
Well, definitely don't give up on the idea of making this a full-length feature film, because we want to see that.
I'm short. I mean, I can probably be shot at 4'9". I'm 5'9".
We could do the Lord of the Rings thing. We could do the you know, we can shoot you at like basketball players and make you look tiny, and have you as the badass Green Beret, man.
Have Pablo.
You know who I thought? You know who I thought would be? You know who I thought would be the most amazing? Richard Flaherty, who was 70 years old when he told me his story. Can you imagine if I can get Danny DeVito?
That's right, Danny DeVito. I was gonna say that.
Like Danny DeVito to, like, you know, to sit there on a bench, Forrest Gump style, telling me his life story the way it kind of happened, and we go into the flashback. Like, what? Like, and the thing I would like to do for Danny is, like, man, think about Danny's life, man. He's a little guy, and he made it in an industry where they ain't know many little guys. So that guy's always had to play a clown, and not a clown, but he's always comedy. Maybe once let Danny be a hero. Well, how cool would that be?
And nothing against Danny. I mean, Prince was short, but at least Prince, you know, had some sex. Not that I was attracted to Prince, but Prince still was a good-looking guy. Danny DeVito was short and ugly, and he still That,
And he still
that
made
dude-
it.
that dude-
He beat the
that-
odds, and
that-
you know.
he deserves. I respect that. Just
So how about
because-
let's
yeah.
make him a hero for once in his life? Let's you know, I'm the real Danny. Let him play a hero for once in his life, because which he is.
You bet.
Because, dude, how
Yeah.
many people must have told that dude, there ain't no fucking way you're going to be an actor. There's no way.
And yeah, he's more of a man actor than a lot of the men actors nowadays.
Yeah.
The kids, to be honest with you. Yeah, you better hurry though. He's getting up there, brother. You
Yeah,
better
that's
hurry.
why. Listen, we got to get Danny this year.
Yeah.
We got to get him.
Yeah.
I got to get him
Well,
filming with him.
That would, it
Good
would
luck,
be
man.
awesome, man. So
So,
as we said,
yeah.
guys, whether it's Tubi, Amazon Prime, there's many places to watch this. So no excuses. You know, if you're an Amazon Prime member, it's completely free. That's how I streamed it.
YouTube has it on free too. There's a YouTube. You got to watch it with ads. You can watch it with
yeah.
ads.
YouTube
So-
TV, Tubi's free, Pluto's free. All those
Yeah,
are free
yeah,
internet streaming
yeah.
services. All.
Yeah. So no excuses, guys. Check it out if you haven't already. The Giant Killer. And then check out the book, The Giant Killer, American Hero, Mercenary, Spy. And then
And
the other book.
I just want to
say the other book,
that,
Giant Killers.
yeah, just wanted to add that I just got picked up as an audiobook on Spotify, which has really helped get
Oh,
the word.
sweet.
I remember, so
Congrats.
when the audiobook pops out, you know, like Chris is saying, well, how come the movie's getting some steam? Because one is kind of selling the other. People see, oh shit,
Yeah.
there's an audiobook, The Giant Killer on Spotify. They listen to it when they're driving. Like shit, there's a documentary. So all that stuff kind of helps me.
That's
Good deal.
awesome.
Good
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah. When
Congrats,
I just
man.
Thank you.
searched Giant Killer, you see all this stuff. So then, as I said, also Giant Killers, War Heroes, and Special Forces Legends. That's also available on book. Smallestsoldier.com, at the Giant Killer Official on Instagram. And then David's personal Instagram is at David_Yuzuk. And yeah, this has been awesome, man. I'm glad I finally got around to seeing the film, and you told an amazing story. You've inspired me in a way. It's funny. The guy who does the theme music for this is Jimmy Allen, the original guitar player for Puddle of Mud. And the way I got connected with him is I've always wanted to do a documentary film on Puddle of Mud, because they have an amazing story. But it's like the amount that goes into it. But when I see someone like you who didn't have any background and managed to
None.
make this whole thing, it's like, all right, no excuses.
Yeah, no, listen, man, just Eli, take that first step. Just take it.
Yeah.
You know, like don't fucking wait till next year. Don't wait. Just take that first step and move forward. And listen, you could make it a short. It doesn't have to be, you know, full length. People now are watching these little 20-minute shorts. Just you know, make sure you get stuff, because time's gonna fly by, man. The only
True.
thing that doesn't change is Chris, because bro, you have not fucking aged. 9
just-
years
I just-
and you look
I just
exactly the same, man.
I just
Holy
shaved my gray
shit.
hair off. That's all, man. So I go for the
Bro,
high
no
and tight.
dandelion. I had to fucking shave my head. No, you look good, man. I'm really,
Good
Chris.
thanks, brother.
I can't thank you
bro.
enough. You were the first.
That was my
Think
honor.
about in the documentary. You were the first person who believed in me, Eli. There was no documentary. There was no team. There was no like. I called up Chris's manager. I was like, hey, I don't know if he would do it. He goes, yeah. I spoke to Chris. He'll do it. You know, it's like, so to
Yeah.
me, it's like, once Chris jumped on board,
What?
people like saying, I want to interview people. They're like, well, who's, I said, well, Chris Prano's in it. Like, oh, I know who he is. You know, so
Yeah.
it opened a lot of doors
Thanks,
for
man.
me. It helped me. You know, you got to be really, really grateful to the people you meet on your journey. And I'm always going to be grateful to Chris for helping me.
Well, brother, and look what you're doing for, I mean, now this is carrying on now where you're keeping my name out there. To be honest with you, I'll see Google alerts pop up where it says Giant Killer, Chris Pro on the IMD. Like, oh, look at this.
Bro, my
Just-
fucking
so-
audience
so
loves
rest-
you. Chris,
Right.
my audience loves you. If I post anything with you on it, bro, I don't know if you know how much people love and appreciate what you did. I know you took a lot of blowback, but there's a huge audience that really does appreciate what you did for our country. And a lot of people don't know that, you know, that you're an Army Ranger. They only know you from Benghazi, man. One of the toughest jobs in the military. So thank you.
I know. Thank you again. And whatever you need, brother. And yeah, just if I can help with Danny DeVito, I hope you get it.
I'm waiting on
I don't think I
Pablo.
can, man.
I'm waiting on Pablo.
Pablo, you're gonna have to. I love Pablo, but Pablo, you have to call his agent. He don't. Pablo's agent, man.
Hey, that dude threatened.
and
Listen, that dude threatened to kick my ass. So I got an in. He owes me. He threatened to beat me up.
Well, I know we'll cross paths again soon, brother. We will.
Yeah, bro.
Definitely.
Anything you guys ever need on the other side, man, I love it. And hey, bro, drink Tanto
Tato vodka.
Taco
You and I will
vodka,
have
man.
it. You and I will tip it up here. We get down to
Absolutely.
Florida. We'll do something in Florida the next year. I hope we can, because that's what I'm hoping for. Praying we get down there, brother. We'll get some. We'll do a little video. We'll do something. We'll
Yeah.
figure out something cool.
And you know what? We can do some giving back to some of our vets, which is, both in our hearts is giving
Well, and
back.
that's if we do it, the movie and stuff, the proceeds, I would say it would be giving proceeds. Any proceeds earned would be to give it to whatever foundation you want to give it to that's down in Florida, or a law enforcement foundation. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, listen, man, we just talked about how do we solve these problems, little tiny things like this that we can go out and help people.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's all for this episode of Battleline Podcast. But we're always posting new content on social media. Follow us on Instagram at Battleline Podcast and on Twitter at Battleline Pod. That's an order. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes up every Tuesday. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice. Believe in yourself. Face all challenges head on. And as always, never quit.